want to show you the face of a sellout. Now, I'm not saying that Kyle Kulinski is somehow being paid by the big pharma industrial complex, but I do want to say before I play this crazy clip where he says, we got some really, really bad news for you. If you're anti-Pokerino, you are in practice anti-big pharma industrial complex who manufactures and profits from the big Pokerino. Conversely, if you're for or pro Pokerino, you're pro big pharma industrial complex, whether you're being sponsored by them, whether you're getting a paycheck from them or not. You're actually representing the big pharma industrial complex when you promote their products. If you're pushing this fear dispelling poke, because a lot of people get their fears dispelled when they submit to the propaganda, you're pro big pharma industrial complex, whether you like it or not, and whether you're getting paid for it or not. Remember, fake stream CIA infiltrated Operation Mockingbird MK Ultra programming was brought to you by
Pfizer. CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer. Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer.
And mainstream media devoted large chunks of their programming to peddling this injectable agent while being sponsored by that agent's maker. But listen to Kyle Kulinski from Secular Talk. You would think, holy cow, he's just as good of a big pharma industrial complex representative as Donald Trump, the father of the vax, was.
All right, I got some really bad news, guys. I got some really bad news. So NBC News says the following. Special report. A large swath of the U.S. currently does not have the basic ground-level immunity necessary to stop the spread of viruses that had once receded into the past. A 6-month NBC News investigation in collaboration with scientists at Stanford University finds. So they go on to say, this investigation gathered massive amounts of data from state governments and archives of public records reaching back years or decades. Here are some of the key findings. Since 2019, 77% of counties and jurisdictions in the U.S. have reported notable declines in childhood vaccination rates. The declines span from less than 1 percentage point to more than 40 percentage points. Vaccine exemptions for school children are rising nationwide. As many as 53% of counties and jurisdictions saw exemption rates more than double from their first year of collecting data to the most recent. Among the states collecting data for the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, 68% of counties and jurisdictions now have immunization rates below 95%.
And Kyle is crying over this. He's bemoaning this fact that these people who were once customers for the big pharma industrial complex are no longer customers. How do we change this? This is horrible. This is big news. This is crazy. This is not something we want, says Kyle.
That's the level of herd immunity doctors say is needed to protect against an outbreak.
Doctors who are sponsored by and get kickbacks from who, Kyle?
So do you understand what they're saying there? Because of the anti-vaccine bullshit that's been spreading around, now you have a bunch of people who are hesitant to vaccinate their kids. And they're getting exemptions from vaccine mandates in schools.
Gosh, I wonder why they're hesitant, Kyle. I mean, it wouldn't be because people are doing their own research and maybe looking at things like the VAERS report. Maybe they're reading the fine print on this tissue thin piece of paper that comes with that Jabberino.
Now, in 68% of counties, they are below the 95% level of vaccination, which means herd immunity is no longer there. Which means old school illnesses and diseases and plagues, including measles, mumps, or rubella, they're going to make a fucking comeback.
They're going to make a comeback. This is a foregone conclusion. If you cut off the customer supply, if you cut off the people who are consuming the products of the big pharma industrial complex, you're going to have a massive comeback of all these unwanted diseases that the big pharma industrial complex under Rockefeller and whoever managed to eradicate. We can't have that, says Kyle.
All because people decided to be anti-science. All because there's a bunch of bullshit anti-science propaganda out there and people fell for it.
So he's equating people who use their critical thinking skills, who don't just believe everything they see on mainstream programming and decide, you know what, this product isn't for me. And he's calling that anti-science. He's actually dismissing people who employ critical thinking and take a road different from the road that Kyle takes.
This is very disturbing. Quote, as childhood vaccination rates fall, we'll see more diseases like measles, Dr. Sean O'Leary, an infectious disease expert with the American Academy of Pediatrics, said about the findings. And we'll see more children, tragically, die from diseases that are essentially entirely preventable.
We will see, says this doctor. How often have doctors been wrong? What's one of the top causes of death in the United States and has been for decades? Medical malpractice. Last time I checked, the death toll was between 250 and 350,000 people every year from medical malpractice. Not counting 76,000 a year from the distribution of prescription drugs.
Nowhere are NBC News findings more striking than St. Louis. The rate of children starting kindergarten in the St. Louis area who are fully vaccinated has plummeted from 91.6% during the 2010-2011 school year to 75.9% in 2024-2025. We're just in a waiting phase before measles comes and rocks the state of Missouri, a head nurse at the premier charter school in St. Louis says. More on how we got the story and gathered the data anyway. So
that all sounds like fear-based predictions, and it's predicated on a reading of fake stream CIA infiltrated Operation Mockingbird MK Ultra fear porn.
They explain more there. But this is, understand something. We're in a new age of anti-intellectualism, anti-science, anti-empiricism, and there are massive, massive consequences as a result of that. Massive consequences as a result of that.
You know what Kyle's saying here? If you refuse to be a big pharma industrial complex lab rat, some really, really bad things are going to start happening in this country. You better get back in line.
And so we already saw this, what was it, a measles outbreak in Texas that happened recently under RFK.
Yeah, that outbreak happened from January 2025 to August. It ended in August 2025. And according to statistics, it affected 762 people. 17%, or about 130, were hospitalized. They claim that 2 died because of it. And, newsflash for you. According to doctors, measles resolves itself in 2 to 3 weeks in healthy individuals, 80% of the time. Only 20% of the time does it result in complications like pneumonia, encephalitis, or ear infections. And by the way, there are 7.2 to 7.6 million children in the state of Texas, because that's where this outbreak happened. This outbreak only affected about 514 children under the age of 18, which means this outbreak that Kyle's talking about affected 0.006 children in the state of Texas. That's how massive and horrifying this outbreak was. And Kyle wants to use this fear tactic to get more people to become customers of the dreaded big pharma industrial complex. But wait. He's not done yet.
We also have him waging a war on vaccines in his own respect, making it so that you can't get the COVID vaccine unless you get like a doctor's prescription for it, and you fit a narrow demographic of people that are like old or have clear pre-existing conditions. It's not like anybody could just get it anymore. They've also, delayed the release of the seasonal flu vaccine. They didn't, do the committee hearings they had to do in order to pick the right one, etc. And so, make no mistake about it. What we're witnessing here is a war on public science. Never mind the fact how many.
It's a war on public science. So he's calling people who are using their critical thinking skills to make decisions about their own family to not take a certain product. He's calling this a war on science. This is very deceptive for people who aren't thinking properly and very manipulative. And one would almost think that Kyle is on the big pharma industrial complex dole.
Different fucking long-term studies were axed, studies on diabetes and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and RFK and Trump scrapped all of the mRNA research. Well, guess what? mRNA vaccines, they were working on a cancer vaccine that was an mRNA vaccine. They just cut off all the funding for that. No more. And so we were close to, there were some breakthroughs. We were about to get a fucking cancer vaccine. They killed that shit.
We were about to get a cancer vaccine and they scrapped it. Imagine that after 40 or 50 years of research a money pit, a sinkhole, a funding sinkhole that didn't make hardly any progress at all. But right after they scrapped the mRNA project, they were about to have a cancer breakthrough, according to Kyle.
They killed it. And so when you have that mixed with cutting off all of the medical grants and the research grants and the science grants. You have this thing called brain drain, where all of these immigrants who come here to study at our colleges and universities and do a lot of medical research and scientific research. Well, now we decide to throw a bunch of immigrants in concentration camps. And so all those people who were going to come here going, I'm not fucking going there anymore. I don't want to end up in Alligator Alcatraz or fucking Seacot or Guantanamo Bay. Fuck out of here. And so because of all of that stuff, it's an amalgamation of all the worst things you can imagine. And so guess what? Now we're cooked. Now this country is cooked. Medically, scientifically, when it comes to our research, when it comes to our development. And you also have, because of...
We're cooked because customers have stepped out of the line of Big Pharma. No longer do they want to be customers. They're living healthier lifestyles. They're teaching their kids, here's how you strengthen your immunity. We don't need to be relying on pills and powders and potions. Kyle's sitting here calling those people enemies of science.
You know, the rise of anti-science bullshit, the rise of misinformation online, of course, is a big part of this. Misinformation, disinformation, malinformation online. Now you have a scenario where a lot of people go, I'm just skeptical of vaccines. Okay, well, once you fall below that 95%, 93% line, you're a sitting duck, right? And so you make it much more likely that there's going to be a measles, mumps, rubella outbreak. We're going to have old school plagues that we all thought were gonzo are going to make a fucking comeback. I mean, then you want to talk about first world problems.
It's going to happen. Is this almost a setup? Like, this is the next step in the next phase of the program?
Imagine having the ability to effectively eradicate all these diseases through vaccination, but people are choosing not to do that. They're choosing not to do that, all because of some horseshit that they heard, because the head of HHS drinks methylene blue, a fucking blue dye that's used as like a fucking fish tank cleaner that he thinks fixes his mitochondria. He's on human growth hormone and testosterone. He takes a peptide that makes his skin darker. He pops nicotine in and talks about it like it's fucking healthy, right?
And by the way, RFK Jr. is all part of the left versus right lie and paradigm as well. He's hanging and dangling from a bankster string, just like all these parasitic propaganda puppets.
Right? This is a guy who's running science in this country, and a bunch of people have bullshit, dumbass science beliefs. And that's what's happened with the collapse of belief in institutions, which is partly merited. People have now taken that skepticism and they've gone one step further into cynicism. And so
it's partly merited. What part is unmerited? What part do you determine to be merited? What's your criteria, Kyle? What's your criteria for somebody critically thinking and going, you know, my kid's doing well. He doesn't need to bow down at the altar of Big Pharma. Just leave him alone. And here's Kyle going, no, you're just a frickin' science denier.
Take the shot.
Believe no institution's ever telling the truth, right? And people went from being skeptical of Big Pharma because of the price gouging and the profit motive. And many people have taken an extra step into just being anti-modern medicine because they're skeptical of Big Pharma.
You know what's hilarious about this whole thing is Kyle, rightly so, criticizes Elon Musk for being basically a prostitute for subsidies. He's been given $35-40 billion in subsidies. Well, who else? What other industry? What other CEOs in what other industry have been subsidized heavily by government in the last 3, 4, 5 years now? Oh, that's right, the Big Pharma industrial complex. As a matter of fact, 1 year after 2020, March of 2020, Pfizer posted record profits of $100 billion, not million, $100 billion. And that's partly, or the lion's share of that comes from the $6.2 trillion CARES Act, the biggest power and wealth transfer in the history of mankind. So one of the biggest beneficiaries of subsidies has been the Big Pharma industrial complex. He rightly criticizes Elon Musk for being a subsidy queen while he's going to bat for the Big Pharma subsidy queens, and then trying to shame you because you don't want to be a customer of those subsidy queens.
Well, the problem with Big Pharma is the profit motive. The reality is you got to fucking nationalize it. That's what you got to do. You got to take out, the ability to make money.
We have to nationalize it. In other words, we got to steal a whole bunch of money from a whole bunch of people who don't want to be stolen from so that we can nationalize Big Pharma. So not only is he trying to sell the potion, he's also condemning the fact that they have a profit motive. So Kyle Kulinski wants you to get a potion from people who are highly incentivized to sell you that potion so they can bankroll record profits. That's who Kyle Kulinski is. That's how inconsistent and unprincipled he is. So this is leftist propagandist and big pharma industrial complex salesman Kyle Kulinski from Secular Talk. Leave your thoughts about this for the world in the global thought police in the comment section below. This is a crazy world. If you like these videos, give it a like. Share it with everybody you know. If you want, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon. If you want to support the channel further, the links are in the description. I appreciate you guys being here. Truth fears no scrutiny. Question everything.